Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're taking a look at a rifle scope, which is not typically my MO. You guys have probably stuck around with the channel because we've done a lot of stuff with force reset triggers lately, super safety, and we've been doing some red dot reviews for a company called Sealy because they've been kind enough to keep sending me red dots and letting me play with them, and I've had a good time and a good run. But apparently Discovery Optics, they got a little bit jealous, and so they decided, hey, maybe this guy who apparently has got a decent enough following, we'll check out one of our optics and see what he thinks. So here we are with the review of the 1-6 optic from Discovery Optics, and let's just kind of talk about it. So right off the bat, I will note that the packaging was actually pretty nice. It's hefty, it's well cut, it's laser cut styrofoam, so everything's set and shipped very, very well. Now, of course, it's shipping from China, so they need to make sure it's not going to get damaged in transport. But nevertheless, it ships and packs pretty well. Inside the box, you're going to find the scope. You'll also find a kill flash, which we had installed. You're going to find some extenders in case you need a sunshade. And then, of course, you've got 2 caps. Now, the caps don't actually flip or stay on there. It is just push and remove. So bear that in mind if that's something that you're interested in or concerned about. But also one thing that they do include is the mounts. Now, this mount is nothing, and I mean nothing, to write home about. It is extremely fragile. They're using cheap aluminum screws. I have every intention to say this is probably going to strip out in the long run. If I were to remove and mount, it's going to have problems. Now, one of the interesting things is I did go ahead and torque everything to spec before we came out here. And when we did our first zero test, which was on paper, I did no adjustments. So, kudos for them actually having this thing good to go out of the box. But when we did that first test, after 3 rounds, it kind of picked by the scope and realized, oh, that's not good. The scope was moving. So retightened everything down and went a little bit past the torque spec to make sure everything is super snug. Happy to report it hasn't moved again, so maybe we just didn't quite get that setting right initially. But nevertheless, guys, I would not use the included scope rings if you do decide to go with this, unless you're doing something like 22 or airsoft. If you're shooting this on something heavier, this is a 7.6239 caliber. Don't recommend using their scope rings included. Get yourself a cantilever mount, because here's the next thing. You're probably going to need it. What I want to talk about on this scope that is what irritates me the most is definitely the eyebox. Now, when we actually pick it up and see, right now, I have it on 1X. So when I draw it to my eye, I've got about right there, and I'm pretty good. This is about the best that I could get it situated. So with 1X, that's my eyebox. Eye relief was pretty well. Now, we're gonna go ahead and watch this throw. So it does come with a throw lever, which helps, but my God, it sticks up so much and it was interfering with our aim cam. So that's the full rotation to get to 6. And now we're gonna go back into position. And that's my eyebox with very minimal room to be able to get it adjusted. If I move any, I lose the picture. So not the best in that sense, but it is usable. So in this situation with an LPVO, what I like personally for LPVOs is utilizing them as pretty much a red dot sight. So when I say that, I mean I keep my LPVOs at 1X when I keep them in the shelf or in the safe, wherever it's at. But I also keep the illuminated reticle on, and that means it's on the ready. I can grab it, I can go. Now, Primary Arms has introduced their Shake-Awake caps for their 1-6 LPVOs, and that's a pretty neat feature. A feature that this should have, because what we noticed was we used the included battery, we set it up, I got it all figured out, got it all ready, set my illumination to the lowest possible level that was visible inside, and left it. 2 weeks later, I did a short on it because I was getting ready to film this, and noticed the battery was already dead. So it may have just been a very cheap or very old battery that it shipped with, but if that is the actual draining that this thing has, buyer beware. If you're using this for illumination, you will have to turn it off and on, and it may have some phantom drain in there even with it being off. Long-term review is needed. Stay tuned, and maybe we'll check back in 6 months with a fresh battery and see where that is. Now, other things about this scope that they wanted you to know is it is waterproof. It is nitrogen purged. They do a lot of quality control checks on this thing to make sure everything is ready to go. The scope itself is going to be a first focal plane, so you don't have to worry with adjusting your holds if you're zooming in and out. There is no magnification factors that you have to worry about. And your turrets and your reticle are both in alignment. They're both in milrad. And so if you're a milrad fan, you're good to go. Personally, I like MOA. I don't know why. It's just an easier unit for me to work with. So I only have one other mil scope, and I got used to it over time, but just bear that in mind if you're looking at this for your setup. So what we want to do is go ahead and do a tracking test, and it does have a tracking guarantee. It even mentions it all over your adjustment knobs whenever you're going in to look at it. So with the tracking test, what we're going to do is we're going to punch a group onto an ID target, keep it center mass, see how we do. We're going to take 3 shots. Then we're going to go ahead and add an additional 8 MOA of elevation. We're going to do a holdover so that, or we're going to reduce, lower 8 milrad of elevation. And we're going to do an 8 milrad hold to see if we hold that same position. Then we're going to go ahead and do 4 mils of windage to see, and we're going to hold for both the 8 and the 4. And today we're going to be using our trigger cam, thanks to the folks over at Red Lion Tactics for getting us connected with this. Check them out on their Facebook page or their Instagram or even their YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. But with the trigger cam, we're able to bring you directly into the view of the scope so you can see how we're doing our holds. You can look at how the reticle looks like. So let's go ahead and get to that footage and then let's talk about it. All right, guys, so we have the Discovery Optics put on our KS-47 from Palmetto State Armory. Today we're just shooting some pretty standard mil-spec ammo made in Russia with love, and we're going to see how it handles some accuracy tests. Now, I'll throw up on the screen our initial 5-shot group. Once we did zero this optic, it came out pretty good. But one of the things that Discovery Optics guarantees is their ability to track. So how we're going to do our tracking test today, and we've got the aim cam compliments of Red Lion Tactics. They're over in Orange, Texas. If you ever need to get something, go check them guys out. I think they're under Guard and Defend now. They did kind of go through a little merger. But nevertheless, give them a like, give them a check. And they also have a YouTube channel, link down in the description. But what we want to do, guys, is we want to do our tracking test by essentially adjusting our turrets now that they're zeroed. And we're going to go ahead and do an 8 MRAD up. And then we're going to hold for 8 MRAD in the scope. And then we're going to make sure we impact the same spot. We've got a freshly painted target downrange. I've got a downrange camera so that you're going to be able to see what we're hitting. So without any more, let's shut up and shoot. And we're just going to hold center mass. I don't know, maybe I'll check the camera footage, but this is happening a lot. Maybe my trigger finger's bumping it when I pull it off the trigger well. Let's go ahead and get back to it. Let's get a 3. Yep, so there it goes again. All right, but that's 3-round group, so let's go ahead, make our adjustment on the scope, and let's see what it does. All right, so now we have gone ahead and adjusted for our 8 MRAD hold. So if tracking is true, we should go ahead and see now holding at the 8 hash. And there we go. Wow. So it might be just a hair low, could have been a trigger jerk. But now that we've gone ahead and confirmed that, and we're still holding 8, so let's go ahead. And now we're going to go to the left. So let's see what we're doing. Let's just do 4. So let's go 4 left. It's going to put us on 6. Remember, we're having to hold for elevation and windage now. Okay, so that's a pretty good group. Now, I wasn't expecting too much out of the tracking. I was expecting it to be able to track, but as far as I can tell, everything looks good. So let's go ahead and move on. So guys, the tracking test was actually pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but then again, I'm no expert at holdovers, and the ammo has a little bit of variability too. So we punched our 3-round group, and we saw that it stayed just fine. We were shooting probably maybe under 2 MOA for the actual accuracy. I did get a 1 MOA group on a head box earlier. I'll throw the picture up here. But with this, we saw a 3-round group, so we went ahead and started doing the tracking. We adjusted for our 8s, and we did a holdover that you could see, and it hit a little bit low. Could have been the variability of the ammo. Could also have been just that I was holding a little bit off. We can look at the trigger cam footage and confirm that. But all in all, it tracked pretty well. When it came to the windage test, again, I didn't adjust my elevation back, so we're having to do a dual hold. The thing that I don't like about this reticle that I do like about my other mill reticle is that I usually have a Christmas tree that does all the dots out and spreads everything over, so when I'm holding for both wind and elevation, I'm able to select exactly where I need it to be and have a precision dot. With this, there is no precision dot if you're doing hold. You have to just line it up. So I was just lining up my windage adjustment on the silhouette of the target, and I was lining up my elevation adjustment on the windage of the target, as you could see in the footage from the trigger cam, hopefully. And again, it tracks just fine. Now, it was a little bit off. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and blame that one on me. I'm not gonna blame it on the tracking of the scope. The scope tracked just fine. So kudos to that. It does have a tracking guarantee, so later on in life with it, 6 months, a year from now, if you start seeing that you're walking a lot and your tracking is just not following, you can go ahead and send it back to a US distributor. I believe they have set up, and they'll get that taken care of for you, or they'll just send you a new one and replace it. So maybe we'll check out their warranty side and see how that goes, but hopefully we never have to use it, right? But final thoughts, guys, this is a very cheap optic. And when I mean cheap, we're talking sub $200 for an LPVO. And of course, it's made in China like a lot of the other ones out there. Now calm down all of you elitists, because SIG, even their lower end stuff, Vortex, their lower end stuff, it's all made in China. In fact, they are mostly using the same factories and they're just tweaking them a little bit. I don't think that's the case with the Discovery Optics, simply because this is a little bit different, heavier, bulkier, and everything about it is just different from what I've seen from the Vortex and from the SIG lower end optics. So I do think they use a different factory, but again, understand what you're getting. You're paying less than $200. I think on sale, it was just over $100 when I was looking for a 1:6 LPVO. Now, of course, you can get a Strike Eagle on sale for about $300, which is my go-to when I talk about a cheap 1:6 optic. In fact, I'm running it on my 4570 right now. But for what you get as a package deal, if you use it for a 1X, your eyebox relief is probably going to be fine. If you use it for 6X, you're going to have to be on a bench rest to be able to keep your head focused, because doing it freestanding is just going to be a mess. Anywhere between 2 to 4, and I think you're fine. So keep it within 100 yards, and you're going to have a good time with it if you're just throwing this on some kind of plinking build, if you're throwing it on a pig gun that you use for inside of 50, or maybe it's just something that you want to throw in the truck on a truck gun that's just there in case you need it. But if you want to rely on it for your life, always buy high-end, always buy good optics for that. If you're relying on this as a red dot sight style LPVO at 1X, keep in mind the battery life. But guys, let me know what you think of the Discovery Optics. Is it Chinesium garbage, or is it a budget-friendly option that you could see yourself purchasing? And do you want to see more reviews like this? Let me know in the comments. If you're not subscribed, do subscribe, because the more my subscriber count goes up, the more reviews like this we get to do, because apparently it makes me an influencer now. So if you've been influenced, feel free to pick one up at Amazon. I'll try and get a code for their store, maybe save you a few bucks. Otherwise, call it Chinese garbage in the comments below and say why you don't like it, and maybe they'll make some changes. Till next time, guys, stay tuned.